Today we are going to study about an important anthropologist, E.B Tylor, right? He was British anthropologist and he was a main propounder of theory of classical evolutionism. Right? So basically we are going to understand about a contribution of E.B Tylor in anthropology or contribution of E.B Tylor in the theory of classical evolutionism. E.B Tylor, known as a father of British anthropology, but interestingly he was not an anthropologist by training. Second important thing is that he was first a professor of anthropology at Oxford, but he was not a graduate. He was undergraduate. So how can an undergraduate student become famous world anthropologist, or how can an undergraduate student become first professor of anthropology? We try to understand that. But when we are going to study about contribution of E.B Tylor, at first we try to understand about their background, right? Their background. So he was not graduate in anthropology, right? And he belongs from Quaker family, and earlier he participated in his family business, but due to some problems he went to Cuba, where he met with a famous archaeologist Henry Christie, and then both traveled to Mexico. At Mexico in 1856, that was a very important time in his life. In 1856, he saw exploration of Perigold Cave, right? That was archaeological excavation, and therefore at first he was influenced by archaeology and history, right? He was influenced by archaeology and history. So first intellectual work done by E.B Tylor in 1861, that is Anahuac or Mexico and Mexican. That is very important in the life of E.B Tylor. That was the turning point in the life of E.B Tylor. Now he became a writer. But in this book, he mainly tried to explain about culture of Mexico from ancient to present, but mainly focused to present society of Mexico. But that was a first intellectual work done by E.B Tylor, which basically influenced by archaeology and history. But later 4 years, he wrote another important book in 1865 that is very important, research into the study of early history of mankind and development of civilization, right? That come in 1865, and that was the first anthropological work done by E.B Tylor, right? Now E.B Tylor interested in anthropology for the study of culture, and in this work E.B Tylor study about evolution of culture and progress of culture. This is two important themes of this book. Later, he improved his concept about evolution of culture and progress of culture in his famous work, Primitive Culture. That is very famous work done by E.B Tylor in 1871. So in Primitive Culture, he also tried to understand about evolution of culture and progress of culture, right? But that was very important work done by E.B Tylor, because in this book he tried to understand about evolution of language, evolution of symbol, evolution of myth, rational dream of primitive people, and sympathetic magic. So in this book he also tried to understand about similarity in culture. In culture, they try to understand why similarity in culture, and in primitive culture, basically in primitive culture, he want to reconstruct history of man's culture. They started a study of history of human cultural development. But when he started a study of development of human culture for writing of primitive culture, he was facing some important problem. Problem is that when he tried to reconstruct prehistory, right? He give focus to reconstruct prehistory, right? He faced a problem. Problem is that because prehistory is unwritten, there is no literary sources for prehistory. So E.B Tylor found that how can we construct prehistoric culture without written sources? How can we construct? And therefore he postulated two important theory in anthropology, and that was the key thing for the development of theory of classical evolutionism by E.B Tylor. After that, he wrote another important book which name is Anthropology, right? That came in 1881. That time he became very popular intellectual of Britain and popular anthropologist of Britain. So in 1883, he appointed as a keeper in Oxford University Museum, and then he promoted as a reader in Oxford University, and lastly in 1896 he became first professor of anthropology at Oxford University, and where he retired in 1909. And he got knighthood in 1912 for their work. So this is some important facts regarding E.B Tylor. That facts also give us some insight about contribution of E.B Tylor in anthropology, or also that give us insight about how theory of classical evolutionism developed by E.B Tylor. So now we are going to understand how E.B Tylor developed concept of classical evolutionism and what was the major contribution of E.B Tylor in the development of anthropology. So first, when we are going to understand that thing, first we try to understand what is anthropology. According to E.B Tylor, how E.B Tylor tried to understand about anthropology. What is anthropology? According to E.B Tylor. So E.B Tylor said that anthropology is the study of man's development in the course of time. Try to understand. That is very important, because I already said that he was influenced by history. He was influenced by archaeology. So he thought that anthropology is the history of mankind, right? Because in anthropology we study about the development of mankind in the course of time. So that was the basic concept of E.B Tylor regarding anthropology. Second important thing is that because in anthropological theory we study about culture, right? And E.B Tylor has great contribution for the study of culture. So E.B Tylor an important contribution about definition of culture. Definition of culture, he got that definition in any anthropological book, right? And that definition he gave in his famous work Primitive Culture, right, in 1871. That was very scientific and anthropological definition of culture, and that was very broad definition. Still today we accept that is very good definition for culture. So what E.B Tylor said about definition of culture? E.B Tylor said that culture or civilization is that complex whole in which include knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capability or habit acquired by man as a member of society. So that is very broad definition of culture, but try to understand about what E.B Tylor want to say in that definition. So keyword in that definition is acquired, right? It means E.B Tylor said that culture is attribute of man which is socially acquired through learning. Means we got culture through social learning. And another important word here used for the definition of culture, complex whole, right? Culture is that complex whole. So here E.B Tylor said that in culture we include all socially learned behavior of mankind. So that was the broad concept of culture or a definition of culture given by E.B Tylor. Then we also understand what general understanding of E.B Tylor regarding culture. So E.B Tylor said that culture is essentially a historical process, right? Always remember that. I said that he was influenced by history and archaeology. So he thought that culture is essentially a historical process, and therefore he want to study culture as a process of development of man in the course of time. So a study of culture according to E.B Tylor means a study of human development in society from savagery to barbarism to civilization. So that is the basic concept of E.B Tylor regarding culture. But how can we understand, study culture? How can we study culture? Because if we try to understand about anthropological theory, you found that various anthropologists trying to understand culture, and in the course of a study of culture there was development of anthropological theory. So when E.B Tylor tried to study culture, he developed concept of classical evolutionism, right? Try to understand, he was influenced by Charles Darwin and familiar with Charles Darwin. He was familiar with Wallace Huxley. So he was influenced by biological evolution or organic evolution given by Charles Darwin in his famous work Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. Because E.B Tylor was contemporary to Darwin, so he was influenced by evolutionism. But how we apply concept of evolution for the understanding of culture? So when he tried to understand about evolution and progress of culture, basically when he tried to write his book Primitive Culture, so he found that when he tried to write Primitive Culture, in this book basically he want to reconstruct history of mankind. Try to understand that thing. He tried to reconstruct history of mankind. But how can it possible? When he tried to reconstruct prehistoric culture of mankind, he faced problem. Problem is that because prehistory is unwritten, there is no written document for the understanding of prehistoric culture or culture of prehistoric people. So he faced problem, and therefore for the solution of that problem, he developed two important concept, two important principle in anthropology. And that was the key for the understanding of classical evolutionism by E.B Tylor. So, for the solution of that problem, he developed two important concepts. That is uniformitarianism and second, that is concept of survival. Right? Because E.B Tylor, when trying to reconstruct prehistoric culture, he faced some problem. So he utilized that concept, uniformitarianism, in the study of history of human culture. Basically, that concept was first developed by famous geologist Charles Lyell in his famous work Principle of Geology 1832-1833, and basically Charles Lyell trying to understand about the evolution of Earth through that concept. But E.B Tylor applied that concept for the understanding of culture, for the understanding of culture development of mankind, for the understanding of natural history of culture of mankind. So basically, when he wrote his famous book Research into the Early History of Mankind and Development of Civilization, in that work he proposed some concept, and he gave focus to understand about similarities in culture. Similarities in culture. When E.B Tylor tried to understand some important thing related to various culture on the basis of the document of missionaries, traveler, ethnological document, he found that there are similarity in culture. So E.B Tylor think that there are two important possible interpretation of similarity in culture. First is that is parallel invention. Right? First he thought that similarity in culture due to parallel invention. It means like men's mind working under like condition, right? Means human mind working similar in similar condition. That was the basic concept of E.B Tylor that he developed when he wrote his famous work, Research into the Early History of Mankind. But when he tried to write his book Primitive Culture, he applied that concept for the explanation of parallel invention. Or second, he also thought that due to diffusion or contact between the people of different cultural group, right? So when E.B Tylor trying to understand about similarity in culture, he proposed another important concept, similarity in culture, because he applied concept of informatarianism, concept of informity for the understanding of culture, right? For the understanding of culture. So he said that there are universally similar minds in human being which governed by same law of cognition. Means here E.B Tylor said that there are psychic unity of mankind, there are similarity in human mind, and therefore because culture is mental construct. Culture is mental construct. Therefore, there are similarity in cultural process of mankind who live in different areas. Because culture is mental construct, so therefore there are similarity in culture. First important thing here, E.B Tylor tried to propose by the application of the principle of uniformitarianism. He gave attention about similarity in culture, and he reject the idea of diffusionism for similarity, because he mainly give focus to parallel evolution, similarity due to parallel evolution, and then he explained that because in cultural process, human minds are similar, so similar culture develop in different society. That is explanation of E.B Tylor. He give evidence in the favor of similarity in culture through non-material culture, like a similarity in custom, similarity in tradition, similarity in religion, similarity in law, similarity in morals, similarity in kinship behavior, kinship system. And second, he also gave attention about similarity in material culture, right? Similarity in material culture, similarity in tools, technology, use of fire, etc. So here E.B Tylor said that similarity due to similarity in human mind or due to psychic immunity of mankind. Second, he also said that because culture is historical process, so there are also similarity in the development of a stage of culture. Means E.B Tylor here proposed that culture evolved in three stages, that is savagery, barbarism and civilization. Because culture is a historical process, because human minds are similar, and therefore there are similarity in the evolution of culture, similarity in the development of cultural stage in mankind. Right? So this is E.B Tylor, a theory regarding similarity in culture and development, evolution of culture. He tried to interpret about evolution of culture through that. Secondly, because I already said that when he studied, he tried to write about his famous book Primitive Culture. He found some problem. How can we study about prehistory? So that concept he utilized for the study of similarity in contemporary society, different contemporary society and their culture. But that concept he also utilized for the study of prehistoric culture and contemporary savage society. He found that there are many savage society, tribal society who utilize stone tools. That stone tool is similar to the prehistoric tools which we found through archaeological excavation. So that similarity not only in society, in contemporary society, but that similarity also found from contemporary to past society. So he tried to reconstruct about prehistoric culture in the light of that theory. Second important thing here, you try to understand concept of survival, right? Concept of survival, that also given by E.B Tylor for the interpretation of culture, evolution of culture. So that concept of survival means continuity of culture. Right? Continuity of culture. Here E.B Tylor try to explain that those cultural traits evolve in primitive society or past society or prehistoric society, that the cultural traits survive in contemporary society. There are some change happen, but there are many cultural traits shows their continuity from past to present. And through that, he also tried to explain about evolution of culture and progress of culture. But for the interpretation of that whole thing, he utilized comparative method. Comparative method that was popular in 19th century in many disciplines. E.B Tylor utilized that method for the study of culture. He utilized this method for the study of culture. So it means that was based on the concept of similar objects are historically related. Try to understand. Here E.B Tylor utilized that concept for the study of similarity in culture, for the study of evolution of culture, and for the study of survival of culture. That is utilized. As for example, if you try to understand about the physical feature of monkey, ape and man, these all have 5 digits in their hand. So it means they have common origin. That concept utilized by E.B Tylor for the interpretation of culture, because if there are similarity in culture trait of different social group, it means that culture originated in similar way, right? So on the basis of that, he tried to explain about evolution of culture, about continuity of culture, about evolution of different stage of culture. But another important thing you have also remembered, E.B Tylor also give focus about progress of culture, right? He was not only interested to understanding about the evolution of culture, but he was also interested to study about progress of culture. He was also interested to study about progress of culture. And therefore, he said that culture evolved from simple to complex form through savagery to barbarism and then civilization, right? Means past to present. And he also said that history of culture not only give us insight for future forecast, but it also give us insight for how to make future better for mankind. So that day was the basic work done by E.B Tylor. So finally, how can we understand about his theory of classical evolutionism? So for the interpretation of classical evolutionism, or for the interpretation of evolution of culture, he proposed some important assumption. So first important thing is that culture evolved from simple to complex form. First important thing you have remember. E.B Tylor said that culture evolved from simple to complex form. Second, culture evolved in unilinear direction. Third, culture evolved in certain stages, that is savagery, barbarism and civilization. Fourth, psychic unity of mankind. Right? Or similarity in human mind is the basic thing for the understanding of similarity in culture, because culture is mental construct. He also said that culture evolved from homogeneous to heterogeneous. He utilized comparative method for the understanding of evolution of culture. And that thing he explained for the study of culture, which I already discussed. Second, for the study of religion, right? Because he was the first anthropologist who had done anthropological study about the origin of religion. So when he tried to analysis about the origin of a religion, he also said that religion evolved from simple to complex form in unilinear direction and in certain stage, that is animism to polytheism and then monotheism, right? And he also tried to analyze evolution of society in his another work. He said that society evolved from matrilineal to patrilineal because when he observed about an important kinship behavior in many tribal society, that is Kubed. So Kubed found in many Australian tribals, and E.B Tylor explained that that is the symbol of matriarchy, right? And society transformed into matriarchy to patriarchy, and therefore E.B Tylor tried to explain about the evolution of culture, evolution of society, right? So this is the contribution of E.B Tylor, and this is the E.B Tylor approach about evolution of culture and society. But when you are going to study that thing, we have to study critics. When we try to understand about any theory, you have to develop critics on that particular theory. So first critics is that their study is mainly based on secondary sources. Right? Not mainly based on primary sources. That was the first limitation of the theory of E.B Tylor. Second, he was influenced by ethnocentric bias. Ethnocentric bias. Right? Third important thing is that diffusionists said that similarity in culture due to diffusion, not due to psychic unity of mankind. And presently in modern society we know that there are no similarity in human mind, right? So we can't say that similarity in culture found due to psychic unity of mankind, due to psychic unity of mankind. Another important criticism comes from Radcliffe Brown. He was a structural functionalist anthropologist. He said that E.B Tylor work was conjectural history, right? And Malinowski said that his work was limb of conjectural reconstruction, right? And Julian Stewart, you can also mention another important anthropologist Julian Stewart. He had given concept of multilinear evolution. Right? He said that culture not evolve in linear direction, but culture evolve in multilinear direction because role of ecology is determinant for the evolution of culture. So these are the important limitations of E.B Tylor theory of classical evolutionism. But instead of these limitations, the role of E.B Tylor was very important. He was great anthropologist because he was first important anthropologist who tried to establish anthropology as a independent discipline. Second important thing, his definition of culture is accepted by most of modern anthropologists. He was the first anthropologist who had done anthropological study of religion. So he made the base for anthropological research in future, and therefore the role of E.B Tylor, the contribution of E.B Tylor was very important for not only development of anthropology but also for the understanding of evolution and progress of culture, right? So this is E.B Tylor contribution in anthropology.